I'm an average musician. I was in a band in the late 90s, and we were very serious about it. I'm not going to pretend for a second we did not want to be rock stars. We rehearsed at least 5 nights a week, 4 hours at a time, and I traveled the world trying to find the best vocal coaches to help this voice. And we kept to this unflinching routine for 7 consecutive years, at least 5 days a week, 4 hours at a time, and we wrote over 100 songs. And we went nowhere. Well, we traveled places, but often just to perform for the lone sad bartender or for a very disgruntled club owner. Just so you can get a sense of what our shows were like back then, I sketched out this very accurate reenactment for you. See, we were mostly unsuccessful because of, again, this voice. A voice that I declared to be, at the time, oddly with pride, to be the worst voice in Georgia. So at some point, playing for one person got to be a little too much for the band to bear. And I shifted from the front of the music world as a singer to the back of the music world as a music manager. And here, things got pretty interesting. I managed a band that could turn one person into 10, 10 into 100, and soon thousands of people would eventually be enjoying their music. Suddenly, we were performing on all the late-night talk shows I used to watch right before bed as a kid, and traveling to places around the world I literally never thought I would get to visit. But there was one thought I just couldn't shake this entire time. It always bothered me that I wasn't the one holding the guitar anymore. I was no longer the one singing the songs. But I was well aware that I wasn't singing and playing on these stages because I wasn't good enough to sing and play for these crowds. And then one day I had a revelation that would change the course of my life forever. I realized that performing for one person wasn't the obstacle. I had simply been performing for the wrong person. So how did I get from performing for that one person at the bar to that one person here? Because what I want to talk about today is how when we take a deeper look at ourselves, how when we think about what we're capable of and what defines us, are we missing out on utilizing the extraordinary abilities we all possess, missing out because we're looking at them from a focus that is far too narrow, from a focus that is far too limiting? Because not seeing our true value is preventing us from being valuable to others and depriving us of a golden opportunity to make an impact. So what was the one spark for me that got me to see myself differently? Well, on a typical day about 17 years ago, I got a phone call. And after I hung up that phone, I said out loud to nobody, I would never do that. You see, I was on the phone with an acquaintance who was telling me that she was going out of town for the weekend. Where are you going? New Orleans. New Orleans is very dangerous in New Orleans. They're battling Hurricane Katrina right now. What are you doing? I'm going with friends on a charity mission trip to build a house. I was stunned. As soon as I hung up the phone, I wished her well, and I said out loud to nobody, I would never do that. I would never build a house. I don't want to build a house. And I felt shame immediately feeling that way, but I don't want to build a house. I am horrible with tools. And I fail miserably trying to assemble furniture, even with the clearest of instructions. But I'm a good person, right? Are you good if you don't do anything good? So then I thought, okay, I would never do that. But what would I do for someone else? Now, giving myself the grace to be okay with the thing that I wouldn't do, it opened up the floodgates for what I would do. Soon my brain was buzzing. You love to sing. You love to play guitar. You love to bring people together. Your father has been a surgeon for over 50 years. He's always been your idol, but you definitely don't want to be a doctor. But remember, you love to sing. You love to play guitar. You love working with kids. Could you do something that honors your father? Could you be a musical doctor? Could you see patients like your father, but musically? It was like a puzzle coming to life in my head, except most importantly, it was a puzzle that did not require any new pieces. It just required me looking at my abilities in a brand new way. And it made me think that I would never do that held a deeper meaning. It was really code for be selfish. Don't build that house. Focus on something you love, because if you build something you love, you can be useful. And if you can be useful, now you have real purpose. So for me, usefulness plus selfishness equaled purpose. So be selfish. Now, it wasn't so easy to go from this lightning bolt idea I had that was infused with selfishness and transition over into the actual committed action of being a musical doctor. But I found clarity in one of the very first times we would knock on a complete stranger's hospital room door to say, "Would you like to hear a song?" I've altered elements of this next story, but its spirit remains intact. I was bedside with a patient who was in a vegetative state and had been told that this had been his condition for a while now. I started to play Bill Withers' Lean on Me, focusing on my breath and the sound of the guitar, because with his eyes closed and his head tilted up and away, I had no idea if the sound, the music, or even my voice was reaching this person. The father sat intently by his son's side, started to sing along, which created a quick chemistry between us, the way that two voices singing together can achieve. And then the boy started to brush two fingers together, working into a snapping motion. "Snap your fingers, lean on me," the dad called out. We were pretty excited and we both started to sing louder together. And as we hit the chorus of Lean on Me, the boy opened his eyes just a little. "Open your eyes, snap your fingers, lean on me," the dad called out. Soon, blue scrubs and white lab coats entered the room until it was filled with excited observers. Lean on me, everyone singing in unison. There was so much life in that room. I was later told that this was the most movement this patient displayed in their very extensive hospital stay. Now, this moment only lasted 10 minutes, but it seemed to confirm every theory I had bouncing around in my head about the power of how we use our abilities, but also the roadblocks we put up that prevent us from seeing these abilities clearly. We always don't think we're good enough. It is the one lightning bolt idea killer thing that we think all the time. We're just not good enough. But in this moment, I didn't find myself questioning whether I was good enough or not, musically speaking. It just didn't seem that important in this new situation that I'd inserted myself in. It seemed more important just to be present and just to be playing. Because it wasn't about me. The look at me nature of traditional performance, that had been stripped away in this environment. And thus the calculus for how strong my ability had to be, that was stripped away as well. It had me thinking that skill level was far less important if you're willing to shift the focus of that skill onto supporting someone else. And then I thought about how we always compare ourselves to other people. It's just never going to end. That's really all we do. But in this situation, I learned there could be an antidote for that. Insert yourself into an activity where comparison simply isn't a factor. After working with this young boy, a nurse didn't chase me down the hall, wasn't like, "Hey, that was okay, man, but it would have been a lot better if Bill Withers was here singing Lean on Me. That would have been cool. You were okay, but that would have been awesome." You will never hear that, because if you do something for someone else, they will never compare you to someone else. And then I thought about the idea of faith and how faith can break through these roadblocks. Specifically, I think about how we don't simply know what's going to happen most of the time. If I had asked anybody that I know who loves me their opinion on whether I should have knocked on that very first hospital room door, that very first time, I would have heard responses like, "Well, Josh, you're a hypochondriac, so this seems like the literal worst place you could ever find yourself. This is one of your wacky ideas. And by the way, Josh, there's medical equipment, there's medical personnel, 24/7 keeping people alive. I'm not sure where your guitar strumming and your exuberant personality fit into that type of situation." and on and on. There's so much data and so much research that seems to go into every impactful decision we make. But it seemed to me that every minute of my life and every experience I had, that was enough data and research to decide whether I should knock on that door. You are the data and you are the research. You don't have to know everything. We don't have to Google everything. Sometimes you just have to have faith. And finally, I did think about the concept of timing and how when we do get up against the roadblock, we stop, turn around, and say, oh, well, bad timing. And that made me think about how we look at time and life as a series of many beginnings, middles, and ends. You start a job, you work that job, the job ends. Seasons and years are constrained by our perception and predetermined time periods. But what if we looked at it differently? What if there is a beginning, a middle, and an end? But the beginning is when we're born, the end is when we die, and everything else is the middle. Looking at life as one long middle makes it feel more malleable to me, more open to continuous change, as opposed to being constrained by these predetermined endpoints we put up along the way. And thus, it makes it more likely for us to say that the time to do something is now, if it's less likely that we're caught on this hamster wheel of continuous beginnings, middles, ends, and bad timings. So when we're ready to embrace this now moment, and you're ready to use this untapped value you have, these skills you didn't realize you could apply somewhere, what's the end game to all this? Because I think there is one. And I think it involves the power of shared experience. After knocking on well over 1,000 hospital room doors, each time to ask, would you like to hear a song? I would knock on the door of a young man who would illuminate this purpose, the power of shared experience. And more importantly, how shared experience can make somebody feel. Now, at this time at his bedside, we decided instead of singing other people's songs, we would write one of our own. For a jovial and super intelligent young man who had been through multiple surgeries and was preparing for yet another one, I thought writing a song would be a beneficial distraction and maybe fun. But the words that came out weren't fun. And the words that came out were not a beneficial distraction. They were cathartic. Comparing his hospital room to prison, speaking literally about his surgery, all the while wondering out loud what was going to become of him. This was high level, super deep, super private writing, well above my pay grade, but it didn't matter because it wasn't about me. This shared experience had brought out something extraordinary and indescribable in someone else. And I'd like to play you a part of that song. And this is when it was written, so you're getting a 3D cool experience here. Oh. Sitting in a prison cell, 4 white walls closing in on me. Sometimes it feels like I just can't breathe. Laughing gas puts me to sleep. Drilling holes and going deep. And I wonder, why did this happen to me? Thank you. Recognizing that I had the ability to be useful, that proved to be the launch pad for this pretty unexpected life journey. Allowing myself to be selfish in my intentions, that was the catalyst for pushing this idea to action. And then finally, knocking on that hospital room door, that initiated this journey's purpose, the shared experience. So I ask, What door will you knock on? What song will you sing?